Welcome you guys to my NFL Week 18 recap, the final week of the regular season. We start off with a couple of Saturday games. So we had the Chiefs versus the Raiders. The Chiefs going into this were 13-3. Raiders were 6-10. The Chiefs get the job done 13-17. Mahomes has 18 out of 26 throws, 202 yards. Pacino had 8 carries and 64 yards. The Chiefs get a bye week next week, and they get the first seed in the playoffs. And Boston Scott had you had 6 sacks for Chris Jones in that game, so an impressive game for Chris Jones. And the Chiefs have a bye week for next week, and they have the home field advantage. Then we had the other late Saturday game, Titans versus Jags. The Jags make it to the playoffs, winning 16-20. Dobbs, again, why wasn't Malik Willis starting? Maybe he was injured. I didn't check that. I should have checked before I recorded this. But yeah, Dobbs started this. He had 20 out of 29 throws, 179 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Trevor Lawrence 20 out of 32 throws, 212 yards, 1 touchdown. And the Jags are in the playoffs, like I said. Vikings versus the Bears. Bears football. The Bears have the first overall draft pick, because if the Bears won the game, they would have fucked it up. They would have got second in the draft pick. They had to rely on the Texans. Lovie Smith giving them a favor and making his team win the only third game of the year, which happened. The Bears lost this game 29-13. So for the first time since 1947. Now, many years ago, the Bears, for the first time since 1947, for the first time had the first overall pick in the NFL draft. The last time that happened was like when Truman was president. Again, but I have this thing about the Bears that they could go for a defensive-minded player like a Will Anderson, or they could go for somebody else in that kind of something that they don't need, like a field kick, like a kicker or like I said, Will Anderson. When they really should in this first overall pick is get a offensive lineman. But I'll talk about that. Well, I'll talk about that when we get to the draft. Then we have Khalil Herbert had 10 carries and 50 yards. Then you had Kirk Cousins had 17 out of 20 throws, 225 yards, 1 touchdown. And the Vikings, like I said, they won the NFC North and they get the win. Then we had the Bucs versus the Falcons. The Falcons win 17-30. The Bucs are in the playoffs. Brady had 13 out of 17 throws, 84 yards. You had Desmond Ridder had 19 out of 30 throws, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Ellinger had 24 carries, 135 yards. Then we had the Jets versus the Dolphins. The Dolphins needed to get the win and hope that the Patriots lost their game against the Dolphins had to get the job done and get the win, and was praying that the Bills could do them a favor and make the Patriots miss out on the playoffs. They did. The Dolphins win 6-11. Knight had 12 carries and 22 yards, and the Dolphins win the playoffs. Then we had the Panthers versus the Saints. The Panthers get to win 10-7. Again, it's a rebuilding job for both teams this offseason. The Panthers need a quarterback. The Saints need a quarterback. It needs addressing in this draft. Both teams need a quarterback or in free agency. Geno Smith, he is the MVP in my opinion. But yeah. Then we have the Browns versus the Steelers. This is another consecutive year where you have Mike Tomlin, who doesn't end on a losing streak. He has a winning run at the end of the year, 14-28. You had Deshaun Watson, 19 out of 29 throws, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kenny Pickett, 13 out of 29 throws, 195 yards. Then we had the Texans versus the Colts. I said earlier that the Texans needed to lose this game if they was going to get the number 1 pick. They obviously lost something. You know what? Fuck that. We're going to give the Bears the first overall pick. Fuck the Texans. Because again, I'm going to be fired anyway. He was fired after this game anyway. The Colts again. Jeff said is like, oh my god, if we won this game, we could have actually fucking got higher in the draft. So again, they fucked up their draft pick as well. But the Texans win 32-31. Davis Mills had 22 out of 38 throws, 298 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a good game. Ellinger had 27 out of 35 throws, 209 yards and 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Then we had the Patriots versus the Bills. The Bills did their job, 23-35, and Mac Jones got 26 out of 40 throws, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Josh Allen had 19 out of 31 throws, 254 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. They had a good game. Then we had the Ravens versus the Bengals. The Bengals have won the NFC North for the consecutive years for the first time since like the early 80s that they won back-to-back NFC North championships. They beat the Ravens 16-27. You had Brown, who was the third-rate quarterback, started for the Ravens, had 19 out of 44 throws, 266 yards, 2 interceptions. Burrow had 25 out of 42 throws, 215 yards, 1 touchdown. Drake had 16 carries and 60 yards, 1 touchdown. Then we had the Cardinals versus the 49ers. J.J. Watt's his last game yesterday, and the 49ers win 13-38. Cliff Kingsbury has been fired, finally. Kingsbury's been fired again. I'll talk about that later on in the week, give my full thoughts on that. But again, in Arizona they need a rebuild, a full rebuild. That Kyler Murray contract was so great that he was injured again, and he's worth $160 million per year. But you had Brody, who had 15 or 20 throws and 178 yards, 2 touchdowns. Then we had the Eagles versus the Giants. The Eagles got the job done and are the winners of the NFC East. Getting the job done, 16-31. You had Webb, who had 27 out of 40 throws, 168 yards. Jalen Hurts had 20 out of 33 throws, 229 yards, 1 interception. Then we had the Rams versus the Steelers. Rams versus the Seahawks. I forget what I said. The Seahawks are in the playoffs and they get 16-19 in overtime. And Geno Smith had 19 out of 31 throws, 213 yards, 1 touchdown. What a great year they've had as well. Seattle, I mean, I said at the beginning of the year I was concerned about them, especially when you have Russell Wilson, who was gone, and Bobby Wagner was gone. But again, it just shows Russell Wilson was past it, and again, Bobby Wagner hasn't had the best time in California. But again, Geno Smith, what a year he has had, and I'm really happy that I'm hoping that I know that this year 2023. I know it's going to get he'll get a starting point in the NFL somewhere. Then we had the Chargers versus the Broncos. The Broncos win 28-31. Herbert at 25 out of 33 throws, 273 yards, 2 touchdowns. Then the Cowboys versus the Commanders. The Cowboys lost 6-26 to the Commanders. Sam Howell got a start. He should have started at the beginning of the year, to be honest. Like, you look at the quarterbacks he had for the Commanders. Heineke, the bad Carson Wentz trade, Sam Howell should have started from day one. And for him to start on the last game of the season, stupid, and it just shows how bad of the Commanders front office is. I mean, was he going to be any worse than Carson Wentz? Then we had last night's game, the primetime game, the game again, the Lions, the Packers versus the Lions versus the Packers. Packers were at Lambeau Field, and yeah, we're not in the playoffs. But again, we did not those cheeseheads, those stupid cheeseheads. The Packers are out of the playoff contention. The Lions win 20-16. Williams had 26 carries and 72 yards. And that is my NFL recap for Week 18. I am going to get down to do some more scout reports in the week. I know I didn't do many last week, but I am going to get down to doing that now. And I'll be doing obviously the playoff games and whatever. So leave your guys' thoughts on this NFL week in the comments. Peace.